Come close now, children. Come sit by this fire that still burns with old remembrance. Let the night wind carry away the noise of today's world and hear the voice of one who's seen too much, carried too much, survived what shouldn't be survived. I'm one of those who bear the marks time can't erase, one who crossed that dark water in chains, one who watched brothers and sisters vanish at the auction block like they was horses at market. I speak low, but I speak firm, 'cause this memory ain't just mine, it's ours. It's our blood still dripping from this tale. Her name still echoes through them old Virginia plantations, where tobacco grew tall and suffering grew taller still. Aggy. Agnes to the white mistress who wrote names in the big book. But to us, she was Aggy. Tall woman, broad shoulders, skin black as moonless night, eyes that seemed to hold lightning inside. Born already on American soil in 1812, on the Thornton plantation, Prince Edward County. Daughter of Mama Ruth, who came from the Igbo coast, and a father nobody knew the name of, 'cause he was sold when Aggy was still nursing. She grew up between the slave quarters, learning early that sunrise wasn't no promise of freedom, just another day of working till death. Listen here now, 'cause what happened to Aggy at that whipping post in 1837 ain't just her story. It's the story of every soul who stood when they was supposed to kneel, every hand that refused to stay empty, every voice that wouldn't be silenced, no matter the price. This here's a memory the world wants to forget, but we remember. Lord have mercy, we remember. The night Mama Ruth told Aggy about the crossing was a night heavy with spirits. Rain fell soft on the roof of the quarters, that pitter-patter sound like ancestors weeping. And inside the dark cabin, Mama Ruth sat with young Aggy pressed against her side. The child was maybe 8 years old then, all long limbs and curious eyes, already showing them broad shoulders that would carry so much sorrow later on. "Child," Mama Ruth whispered in that voice rough like tree bark, "you too young to forget what I'm about to tell you. Your blood carries memory older than this cursed plantation, older than these chains they put on us." Outside, the night sang with crickets and distant dogs. Inside, the fire was just embers, casting shadows that danced like spirits on the clay-chinked walls. 3 other families slept in that single cabin, but Mama Ruth's corner, her and Aggy and the memory of the man who'd been sold away, that corner was theirs, alone in the darkness. "Mama Ruth," Aggy said, voice small but already strong-willed, "tell me about the big water." The old woman's eyes went distant, like she was seeing something beyond the walls, beyond the plantation, all the way across that terrible ocean. Her hands, gnarled from decades in the tobacco fields, trembled as she touched the girl's face. "The big water," she began, and her voice took on that cadence, that rhythm of the old country. "We call it Kalunga, child. The line between the living world and the land of the dead, and Lord of Glory. When they took us from our village in chains, we knew, sweet Jesus, we knew. We was crossing to the other side." Aggy stayed quiet, listening hard. Outside, an owl called and somebody in the darkness of the quarters muttered a prayer against haint spirits. They packed us in that ship's belly like we wasn't even human, child. Like we was cargo, property, livestock. Suffering so bad I can't even tell it proper. Bodies pressed together in the dark, chains cutting our ankles raw. The smell of death and waste and fear so thick you could taste it. Folks died every day down there, every single day. And they'd throw the bodies overboard like they was nothing but spoiled meat. Mama Ruth's voice cracked. She closed her eyes and tears made tracks down her weathered face. "I watched my own sister die in them chains, Aggy. Watched her give up, watched her spirit just leave. She looked at me one morning with them hollow eyes and whispered in our language, 'I'm going home, sister. I'm crossing back over Kalunga.' And by nightfall, she was gone. They dragged her body up them stairs and threw her to the sharks." Aggy felt something cold and hot all at once move through her chest. She was too young to understand it proper, but she felt it, the weight, the horror, the deep ancestral wound that would never heal. "But you here, Mama Ruth," the child whispered. You survived it." The old woman opened her eyes, and there was fire in them now. Not anger exactly, but something fiercer, something that wouldn't be put out. Survived, yes. But at what cost, child? At what cost? She gripped Aggy's hand hard. "We arrived at Charleston Harbor. Them that was left of us. They washed us down with salt water, scrubbed us raw, oiled our skin to make us shine for the auction block. Put us up there like prize animals for white men to inspect. Opened our mouths to check our teeth. Poked and prodded and violated us in ways I won't speak of to a child. And then they sold us. Split up families that had survived the crossing together. Mothers torn from children. Husbands from wives. Everything we was, everything we knew. Gone." The rain fell harder now. Somewhere in the quarters, a baby cried, and its mother hushed it quick, fearful of waking the overseer who slept in his cabin nearby. "Master Thornton bought me for field work," Mama Ruth continued, her voice steadier now, harder. "Brought me here to this Virginia plantation in 1789 when I was just 15 years old. 48 years I've been here now, child. 48 years since I seen my homeland. But you know what I never forgot? Never once? What, Mama Ruth? My name. My real name. Not Ruth. That's what they called me here, after some Bible woman. My name is Adaise. It means daughter of the king in my language. And that's what you need to remember, child. No matter what they call you, no matter what they make you do, no matter how they try to break you down, you come from kings and queens. You got royal blood in your veins, you hear me? I hear you, Mama Ruth. You carry that knowledge like armor, Aggy. When they whip you, when they work you till you can't stand, when they try to make you forget you're human, you remember. You're Adaise's granddaughter. You got warrior blood. You got the strength of those who survived the Middle Passage. And no master, no overseer, no white man's cruelty can ever take that from you." The child Aggy sat there in the darkness, feeling something vast and ancient settle into her bones. She didn't have words for it yet, but it was there. A knowing, a promise, a quiet rage that would grow with the years. Time moved strange in the quarters. Days blurred into months, seasons into years. Aggy grew tall and strong, her body shaped by endless labor in the tobacco fields. By the time she was 15, she stood taller than most men, with arms corded with muscle from lifting, cutting, hauling. Master Thornton saw her strength and worked her hard, dawn to dusk under that burning Virginia sun. But it was her eyes that made folks take notice. Them eyes that Mama Ruth said held lightning. When Aggy looked at you, really looked at you, it felt like she could see straight through to your soul. The other enslaved folks respected her, even the elders. She carried herself different, not arrogant, but dignified. She walked like she knew something the masters didn't know. The overseer, a cruel man named Silas Crowder, noticed too. He noticed the way Aggy didn't flinch when he rode by on his horse, the way she met his eyes for just a heartbeat too long before looking away. Bothered him, that quiet defiance. Made him feel like he wasn't quite as powerful as he thought he was. "That girl gonna be trouble," he told Master Thornton one evening on the veranda of the big house. "She got too much pride in her. Need to break her down proper before she gets ideas." Master Thornton, sipping his whiskey, waved a dismissive hand. "She's a good worker, Silas. Strong as an ox. Don't go ruining valuable property over your wounded pride." But Silas Crowder stored that insult away, let it fester, and he kept his cold eyes on Aggy, waiting for his chance. In 1830, when Aggy was 18 years old, something happened that would change everything. His name was Isaiah. He was the blacksmith on the plantation, a man of maybe 25 with hands strong enough to bend iron and a heart gentle as morning dew. Quiet man, slow to speak, but when he did speak, folks listened. He'd been brought to Bell Acre 2 years prior, purchased from a plantation in North Carolina. His former master had died, and the estate had been liquidated. That's how Isaiah ended up in Virginia, at the Thornton place. Aggy first noticed him on a sweltering July day when she'd been sent to the forge to have a broken hoe mended. She walked into that dim, hot space, and there he was, stripped to the waist, skin gleaming with sweat. hammering a piece of glowing red iron on the anvil. The ringing of metal on metal filled the air like church bells. He looked up when she entered, and their eyes met. Lord have mercy, something passed between them in that moment. Something old and deep and knowing. It wasn't just attraction, though there was that too. It was recognition, like their souls had been looking for each other across lifetimes. "Broke hoe need fixing," Aggy said, holding up the tool. Isaiah nodded, setting down his hammer. "Set it there. I'll have it ready by evening." His voice was deep, resonant. It made something in Aggy's chest tighten. She should have left then, should have walked out and gone back to the fields. But she stayed, watching him work, watching the way his muscles moved under his skin, watching the way he handled the fire and iron with such careful respect. "You got a name?" he asked without looking up. "Aggy." "Isaiah." He glanced at her again, and this time there was the smallest hint of a smile at the corner of his mouth. "Your hoe be ready by evening, Aggy." She left then, but something had been set in motion. Something that not even chains and cruelty could stop. They courted in the way enslaved folks courted. Stolen moments, whispered words, glances across the yard. On Sundays, when work ceased early and folks gathered in the quarters for what little rest they could get, Isaiah would sit near Aggy. Not too close, not obvious, but near enough that their presence to each other was clear. Mama Ruth watched and knew. Old folks always know. "That blacksmith looking at you hard, child," she said one evening, a knowing smile on her weathered face. "And you looking back." Aggy felt heat rise in her face. "He a good man, Mama Ruth. I can see that. Got steady hands and a quiet spirit. Them's the best kind. But you be careful, Aggy. Love and bondage is a dangerous thing. They can use it to hurt you, use it to control you." "I know, Mama Ruth. But you gonna love him anyway, ain't you?" Aggy met her grandmother's eyes. "Yes, ma'am. I believe I am." Mama Ruth sighed, but there was tenderness in it. "Then love him well, child. Love him fierce. 'Cause in this world of chains and sorrow, love might be the only thing they can't truly take from us. Not if we hold it deep enough." Isaiah and Aggy were married in the old way in 1831. Not in a church. Enslaved folks wasn't allowed proper marriages. But in the hush harbor, that secret place deep in the woods where they gathered to pray and sing without white eyes watching, an old preacher man, himself enslaved on a neighboring plantation, spoke words over them by candlelight. They jumped the broom together, that ancient ritual, while the community sang soft spirituals. "By the power of the ancestors and the mercy of the Lord," the preacher said, "I declare you husband and wife in the eyes of God and our people. What the master don't recognize, heaven does. What the law don't protect, we protect ourselves." And they kissed, surrounded by their people, and for one brief moment they were free. Master Thornton, when he heard about it, shrugged. "Let 'em marry, might get more workers out of it. If the wench breeds, that's profit for me." Such was the calculation of bondage. Even joy was measured in property value. In the spring of 1832, Aggy gave birth to her first child in the cabin she now shared with Isaiah. Mama Ruth served as midwife, her experienced hands guiding the baby into the world, while other women from the quarters sang soft to cover Aggy's cries of labor. The baby was a boy, strong and healthy, with his father's steady gaze and his mother's fierce spirit already showing in the way he gripped Mama Ruth's finger with his tiny fist. "What you gonna call him?" Isaiah asked, voice thick with emotion, cradling his son for the first time. Aggy, exhausted but glowing, looked at the child. "Jonah," she whispered, "like the man who survived the belly of the whale. 'Cause he gonna have to survive so much, Isaiah. So much." Isaiah nodded, tears running down his face. He pressed his lips to the baby's forehead. "I swear on my life," he said low. "I will protect this child. I will protect you. Whatever it takes." It was a promise made in love, a promise made in hope, a promise that the cruelty of bondage would test again and again. Little Sam was born in 1834, and Lily in 1836. 3 children now, 3 souls brought into captivity. Aggy loved them with a fierceness that scared her sometimes. She would lie awake at night listening to them breathe and feel terror grip her heart. The terror of knowing they could be sold away from her at any moment. The terror of knowing she couldn't protect them from the overseer's whip or the master's whims. Mama Ruth, growing older now, her back bent from decades of labor, would hold the children and tell them stories. Stories of Africa, of brave warriors, of clever tricksters who outwitted their enemies. Stories of resistance and survival. "You remember these tales," she'd tell them, her voice growing weaker with each passing season. "You remember where you come from. You remember that you're more than what they say you are." The children would listen, wide-eyed, absorbing those words like water in parched earth. And Aggy would watch, feeling that old fire burning in her chest. The fire Mama Ruth had lit years ago when she told her about the Middle Passage, about surviving, about carrying the memory of kings and queens. She didn't know it yet, but that fire was about to be tested. Tested in ways that would leave scars on her body and marks on her soul, but also tested in ways that would prove, once and for all, that some spirits cannot be broken. No matter what they nail to a post, no matter how much blood they spill, some spirits stand, some spirits resist. Some spirits look the devil in the eye and say, "Not today." Aggy was one of those spirits, and her story was about to begin in earnest. Isaiah's forge was Aggy's sanctuary, though she'd never say such a thing out loud where ears might hear. On those rare evenings when her work in the tobacco fields finished early, when the overseer's attention was elsewhere, she'd slip away to that smoky, hot space where her husband shaped iron into tools, chains, horseshoes, all the instruments of plantation life. She'd sit on a stool in the corner watching him work, and for just a little while, the weight of bondage would lift. "You know what I love about fire?" Isaiah said one evening, his voice low and thoughtful, as he worked a piece of red-hot metal on the anvil. The rhythmic clang of hammer on iron punctuated his words. "Fire don't discriminate. It burns the master's house same as it burns our quarters. It's honest, pure, can't be made to lie." Aggy smiled faintly. "You a philosopher now, husband?" He glanced at her, that small smile playing at his lips that she'd come to treasure. "Just a man who spends too much time thinking while he works. Fire teaches you things if you pay attention. Teaches you patience. Teaches you that some things gotta be heated and hammered many times before they become what they meant to be. Teaches you that even iron can be bent, reshaped, made into something new. But some things can't be reshaped," Aggy said quietly. "Some things just break." Isaiah set down his hammer, plunged the glowing iron into the water barrel. Steam hissed up like angry spirits. He wiped his hands on his leather apron and came to stand before her, cupping her face gently. "You won't break, Aggy. I know you. You made of something stronger than iron." She wanted to believe him. Lord, how she wanted to believe him. Life in the quarters moved to its own harsh rhythm. Dawn came early, marked by the overseer's bell that clanged across the plantation like a death knell. Folks would stumble out of their cabins, muscles aching from yesterday's labor, knowing today would bring more of the same. In summer, the heat was suffering terrible. In winter, the cold bit through thin clothes and thinner cabin walls. Aggy worked the tobacco fields alongside dozens of other enslaved folks, men and women both. The work was back-breaking, cutting the broad leaves, hauling them to the drying barns, stripping and bundling. Her hands grew calloused and scarred. Her back learned to curve under the weight of filled baskets. Her body became a machine of labor, driven by the ever-present threat of the whip. But at night, in the cabin she shared with Isaiah and their children, she was still Aggy, still herself, still the daughter of a days who'd survived the Middle Passage, still the granddaughter of warriors. The children grew. Jonah was a serious child, quiet like his father, with watchful eyes that saw everything. Little Sam was more playful, finding joy even in the smallest things. A smooth stone, a bit of string, a moment of rest. And Lily, oh Lily, that girl had her mother's fire burning bright. She was just 2 years old, barely speaking in full sentences, but already she had a way of looking at the world that suggested she wouldn't tolerate injustice lying down. That girl gonna be trouble. Isaiah said one night, watching Lily refuse to eat her meager supper of cornmeal mush because she wanted to share it with a stray dog that had wandered into the quarters. Aggy smiled despite herself. She comes by it honest. Mama Ruth, now in her 60s and barely able to work anymore, had been reassigned to light duties, watching the children of working mothers, tending the small garden plots behind the quarters, mending clothes. Her body was giving out, but her mind remained sharp as ever. "I won't see these babies grown," she told Aggy one evening, speaking that truth that everyone knew but didn't say. "My time coming soon. I feel it in my bones." "Don't talk like that, Mama Ruth." The old woman shook her head. "Ain't morbid talk, child, just truth. And when I go, I need to know you gonna remember everything I taught you, about who you are, about where you come from, about the strength that lives in your blood." Aggy gripped her grandmother's gnarled hand. "I remember, Mama Ruth, I remember every word." "Good. 'Cause them babies need to know too. You teach them, you tell them the stories. Don't let this place make them forget they're human. Don't let bondage steal their spirits." "I won't, I swear it." But swearing something and living it were different things, Aggy was learning. The plantation had a way of grinding you down, day after day, until you wondered if you'd ever really been human at all. Until the whip and the sun and the endless labor made you question whether dignity was just a dream. Silas Crowder rode through the fields like a pale horseman of death, his whip coiled at his side, his eyes always searching for infractions real or imagined. He was a man of maybe 35, born poor white in the Virginia backcountry, risen to overseer through brutality rather than skill. His face was weathered and mean, his teeth rotting from cheap tobacco, his eyes the color of dirty ice. He hated the enslaved people under his control with a passion that seemed to burn in him like perpetual fever. Hated them for making him feel powerful. Hated them for making him feel powerless. Hated them for reflecting back what little humanity he had left. And he particularly hated Aggy. Couldn't quite say why. Maybe it was the way she carried herself. Too proud, too dignified for a slave woman. Maybe it was the way she looked at him sometimes, just for a heartbeat, with something in her eyes that resembled pity more than fear. Maybe it was just that she reminded him of his own inadequacy, his own miserable existence, and he needed someone to punish for it. Whatever the reason, Silas Crowder made Aggy's life harder whenever he could. Extra work assignments, smaller food rations, threats against her children, small cruelties that added up over time like poison in the bloodstream. Isaiah noticed. Of course he noticed. "He's got it out for you, Aggy. You need to be careful. Lower your eyes more. Don't give him any reason to..." "To what?" Aggy interrupted, her voice sharp. "To treat me like an animal? He already does that, Isaiah. They all do. I keep my head down. I work hard. I don't cause trouble. But it's never enough for men like Silas Crowder. Never enough for the masters. We could be perfect slaves and they'd still find reasons to hurt us." Isaiah's jaw tightened. He knew she was right, but the knowledge didn't ease the fear that lived in his chest like a coal that never stopped burning. It was a Sunday in early 1837 when things began to shift. Sundays were different on the plantation. Only half a day of work, then time for rest, prayer, whatever small joys could be carved out of bondage. Some folks would fish in the creek. Others would tend their tiny garden plots, growing vegetables to supplement the meager rations of cornmeal and salt pork. Still others would gather in the praise house, that small structure the master allowed for religious services, to sing spirituals and pray for deliverance that might never come. Aggy and Isaiah took the children down to the creek that day. The sun was warm, the water cool and clear. Jonah, now 5 years old, waded carefully in the shallows, his serious face concentrated on catching minnows with his hands. Little Sam, 3 years old, splashed and laughed. Lily sat on the bank with her mother playing with smooth pebbles. For a moment, just a moment, it felt almost like freedom. "Look, Daddy," Jonah called out, holding up a tiny silver fish triumphantly. "I caught one," Isaiah laughed, a sound that Aggy treasured because it was so rare. "That's my boy. Now let him go gentle so he can grow up strong." Jonah carefully released the fish back into the water, watching it dart away. "Will we be free someday, Daddy? Like that fish?" The question hung in the air. Isaiah's smile faded. He looked at Aggy and she saw the pain in his eyes, the pain of a father who couldn't promise his children the most basic human right. "I don't know, son," Isaiah said finally, his voice rough. "I don't know, but we keep hoping, we keep praying, we keep surviving. And maybe, somehow, someday, yes, maybe we'll be free." It was the best answer he could give, and it broke Aggy's heart. That same afternoon, back in the quarters, trouble was brewing. A young man named Samuel, no relation to Little Sam, just happened to share the name, had been accused of stealing a chicken from the master's henhouse. Whether he'd actually done it didn't matter much. The accusation was enough. Silas Crowder had Samuel dragged to the whipping post in the center of the quarters. That post, that terrible piece of carved oak, stood as a permanent reminder of the master's power. It was stained dark with old blood, marked with the scratches and dents of countless punishments. "All y'all gather round," Crowder shouted, his voice carrying across the quarters. "Master Thornton wants everyone to see what happens to thieves." Folks came reluctantly, faces carefully blank. This was part of the cruelty, forcing them to witness each other's suffering, making them complicit through their presence. Samuel was maybe 18, a field hand, thin and frightened. They stripped his shirt off and tied his wrists to the top of the post, stretching his arms above his head. His back was already marked with old scars from previous whippings. Would soon have new ones. Aggy stood with Isaiah, holding Lily while the boys pressed against their legs. She wanted to cover their eyes, shield them from this, but Mama Ruth had taught her long ago. Let them see. Let them remember. Let them know what this world will do to us if we let it. Only way they learn to resist. Crowder raised his whip, that nine-tailed leather monstrosity the enslaved folks called the preacher of lessons. He grinned, showing those rotting teeth, and brought the whip down across Samuel's back. The crack of leather on flesh, the cry of pain. Again. 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 10 lashes. 20. 30. By the time Crowder finished, Samuel hung limp against the post, his back a mess of torn flesh and blood. 2 men had to cut him down and carry him to his cabin. "Let that be a lesson," Crowder shouted to the assembled crowd. "Master's property is sacred. You steal, you pay." The crowd dispersed silently, but Aggy stayed just a moment longer, staring at that blood-stained post. She felt something cold and hard settling in her chest. Something like rage. Something like determination. "Aggy," Isaiah said quietly, tugging her arm. "Come on, don't look at it no more." But she couldn't stop looking, couldn't stop seeing young Samuel's blood dripping down into the red Virginia clay, couldn't stop hearing Mama Ruth's voice in her memory. "You got warrior blood. No master, no overseer can ever take that from you. What good was warrior blood if you couldn't fight back?" She turned away finally, following her family back to their cabin. But something had changed in her that afternoon. Some line had been crossed. Some promise had been made to herself, even if she didn't have words for it yet. The fire Mama Ruth had lit years ago was burning hotter now, and soon, sooner than anyone expected, it would become an inferno that would mark Aggy's name in the memory of Belle Acre forever. The sun came up mean that summer of 1837, hot as hellfire before the rooster even crowed proper. Aggy woke in the dark cabin, Isaiah's arm heavy across her waist, the children still sleeping in their corner on the straw mattress. For just a heartbeat, in that space between sleep and waking, she forgot where she was, forgot the chains, forgot the quarters, forgot the master's bell that would soon shatter the morning quiet. Then reality crashed back like cold water. The bell rang. Lord have mercy. That cursed bell. "Up, up," came the overseer's voice from outside, already shouting. "Sun's burning daylight. Get your lazy selves to the fields." Isaiah stirred, groaned softly. His blacksmith's hands, strong as they was, ached in the mornings now. Years of hammering iron took their toll. Aggy kissed his shoulder once, tender-like, then rose and began waking the children. "Come on, babies, Mama's gotta go work." Jonah rubbed his eyes, already learning not to complain. Little Sam whimpered but quieted when Lily, fierce even at 2 years old, patted his head like a little mother. Aggy's heart squeezed tight watching them. Too young to carry such burdens, too young to learn such silence. Mama Ruth would watch them today, like always. The old woman was too frail for field work now, her back bent permanent from decades under the sun. But she could mind children, tell them stories, keep them safe as anyone could in this cursed place. "Remember what Mama Ruth teaches you," Aggy whispered to Jonah, holding his serious face between her hands. "Remember you come from warriors. Remember you're more than what they say you are." "Yes, Mama." She kissed each child, then grabbed her head wrap and followed Isaiah out into the pre-dawn darkness, where other souls were already stumbling toward the fields like ghosts in chains. The tobacco stretched out endless under the rising sun, row after row of broad green leaves that would make the master rich and keep them in bondage. Aggy took her place in line with the other women, each carrying a cutting knife, each knowing the quota they had to meet before sundown or face the whip. Silas Crowder sat on his horse at the edge of the field, whip coiled at his side, watching with them cold eyes. Always watching, always waiting for someone to slow down, someone to stumble, someone to give him reason to strike. "Move faster, you lazy wenches," he shouted, voice sharp as his whip. "Them leaves ain't gonna cut themselves." Aggy bent to her work, knife flashing in the morning light, sweat already beginning to soak her dress. Beside her worked Martha, a woman of 40 with 3 children sold away over the years. On her other side, young Dinah, barely 16, pregnant with her first child by some white man who'd forced himself on her in the barn. All of them cutting, hauling, suffering under that brutal Virginia sun. "You hear about Samuel?" Martha whispered low, so Crowder couldn't hear. "That whipping yesterday like to killed him. Boy can't hardly move this morning." "I seen it," Aggy said quietly, her jaw tight. "We all seen it. That's the point, ain't it? Make us watch, make us scared." "Well, it works," Dinah said, voice trembling. "I'm scared every day. Scared they gonna sell my baby soon as it's born. Scared I'm gonna die in these fields. Scared of everything." Aggy wanted to comfort her, wanted to say something hopeful. But what comfort could she give that wasn't a lie? What hope existed in a world where human beings was property? "We survive," she said finally. "That's what we do. We survive." "Quit that talking!" Crowder's voice cracked across the field like thunder. "Y'all here to work, not gossip like church ladies." They fell silent, heads down, hands moving. The sun climbed higher. The heat became suffering terrible. Sweat ran in rivers, backs ached, hands cramped around knife handles, but they kept working because stopping meant the whip, and the whip meant blood, and blood meant infection, and infection could mean death. This was the day-to-day, this was the endless cycle, this was bondage. At midday, they got a short rest, 15 minutes to drink water from a communal bucket, to eat a piece of cornbread if they'd saved one from breakfast. Aggy sat in the shade of a tobacco barn, every muscle screaming. Isaiah found her there, having been sent from the forge to repair a broken wagon wheel nearby. He sat beside her without speaking, just his presence saying what words couldn't. "I'm here. You're not alone. We survived together." "Crowder been watching you all morning," Isaiah said low. "I don't like it, Aggy. He got that look, like he waiting for something." "Let him wait. I ain't giving him no reason." "You don't have to give him reason. Men like that make up reasons." Aggy knew he was right, but what could she do? Lower her eyes more, bow her head deeper, scrape and shuffle and play the role they wanted? Something in her resisted that. Something Mama Ruth had planted in her refused to completely submit. "I'll be careful," she said finally, but careful wasn't always enough. The afternoon wore on, eternal. The sun beat down like God's anger. Aggy's hands bled from small cuts. Her back felt like it was breaking, her head pounded from heat and thirst. Around her, the other women suffered the same. Some prayed quietly as they worked, calling on Jesus or the old African spirits or both. Some sang low-work songs, the kind that carried double meanings, singing about going home, meaning not the quarters but freedom, singing about crossing rivers, meaning not water but escape. Wade in the water, children. Martha sang soft, her voice cracked and beautiful. Wade in the water, God's gonna trouble the water. The song was a warning, a promise, a prayer. It spoke of the Underground Railroad, of washing away the scent so dogs couldn't track you, of trusting in something bigger than the master's power. Other voices joined in, creating a sound that was part sorrow, part resistance. Silas Crowder rode closer, his face twisted in suspicion. He didn't understand the songs, didn't hear the coded messages, but he felt the power in them and it made him nervous. "Enough singing," he barked. "This ain't no camp meeting. Work faster or taste leather." The singing stopped, but the spirit of it remained, invisible and unbreakable, passing between the workers like electric current. This was resistance too, not dramatic, not violent, but real. The small ways they maintained humanity in a system designed to strip it away. As the sun finally began to sink toward the horizon, Aggy straightened her aching back and looked across the fields. Beyond the plantation, she could see the dark line of forest, and beyond that, the mountains. Somewhere out there, folks said, was freedom. The North Star pointed the way. The Underground Railroad waited to carry souls to liberty, but the journey was dangerous. Dogs would hunt you, paddy rollers would catch you. The punishment for attempted escape was terrible, sometimes death. Still, standing there in the fading light, Aggy felt something stirring in her chest, a question, a dangerous question. What if? The bell rang, signaling end of day. The workers trudged back toward the quarters, bodies broken, spirits battered, but somehow still alive, still surviving. Aggy walked beside Martha, neither speaking. Behind them, Silas Crowder watched, his eyes following Aggy's tall figure like a hawk tracking prey. Tomorrow would bring more of the same, and the day after, and the day after that. Endless days of suffering stretching into an endless future, unless something changed, unless someone broke the pattern, unless... It happened on a Thursday in late July when the heat was so thick you could cut it with a blade, and the tobacco leaves hung heavy with their own weight. Aggy was working her row, moving steady despite the sun beating down like the fist of an angry god. Sweat poured off her, soaking through her rough cotton dress, stinging her eyes. Her hands moved automatic now. Cut, gather, haul, cut, gather, haul. A rhythm burned into her muscles after years in these cursed fields. She heard the horse before she saw it, the heavy thud of hooves on packed earth, the creak of saddle leather. And that sound, that particular sound that made every enslaved soul on the plantation tense up, the soft whisper of a whip being uncoiled. Silas Crowder rode down the road toward her, his face already twisted with that mean expression he wore when he was looking to hurt somebody. The morning had been slow. The heat had made everyone sluggish, and Crowder was the kind of man who needed to inflict pain regular-like, needed it the way some men needed whiskey or tobacco. He stopped his horse right beside Aggy, so close she could smell the animal's sweat, could feel Crowder's eyes on her like dirty hands. "You moving mighty slow there, Aggy," he said, voice deceptively casual. "Mighty slow for such a big, strong wench." Aggy kept working, kept her head down, didn't respond. This was the game. Stay quiet, stay subservient. Don't give him ammunition. But Silas Crowder didn't need ammunition. He made his own. "I'm talking to you, girl," he said, voice hardening. "You deaf? Or just stupid?" "No, sir," Aggy said quietly, still not looking up. "Just working, sir." "Well, work faster. Master Thornton paying good money for you. Expect results." "Yes, sir." She bent back to cutting, praying he'd ride on, praying this would be enough. But prayer didn't always work in places this evil. Sometimes the devil was stronger than the Lord. Crowder sat there a moment longer, and Aggy could feel his frustration building. She wasn't giving him what he wanted. Fear, groveling, tears. She was just working, just existing, just being human in a way that somehow insulted him. Then without warning, No reason, no provocation, just pure meanness. He raised his whip and brought it down hard across the back of Aggy's legs. The crack of leather on flesh echoed across the field. The pain exploded white-hot through Aggy's body. She cried out despite herself, stumbling forward, her knife falling from her hand. The whip had cut through her dress, had torn skin, had drawn blood. She could feel it running hot down her calves. Around her, the other workers froze. Martha gasped. Young Dinah whimpered. Everyone knew what was happening. Everyone knew better than to interfere. "That's for being uppity," Crowder said, voice cold and satisfied. "That's for thinking you something special. You ain't nothing but property, Aggy. Sooner you learn that, easier your life gonna be." He coiled his whip again, preparing to ride off. And that's when something inside Aggy broke. Not her spirit, never her spirit, but something else. Some invisible chain that had been holding her in check. Some last thread of submission. She straightened up slowly, very slowly. The pain in her legs was terrible, but she didn't let it show on her face. She turned and looked at Silas Crowder full on, meeting his eyes direct-like in a way enslaved folks never did. The field went silent. Even the birds seemed to stop singing. Crowder's whip had fallen to the ground when he'd coiled it. Lay there in the red Virginia clay between them. That nine-tailed monster stained with so much blood over the years. Aggy bent down and picked it up. Time seemed to stop. The world held its breath. Somewhere far away, someone whispered, "Lord have mercy," like a prayer against disaster. Aggy walked toward Crowder's horse, the whip in her hand. The overseer's face went from surprise to confused to something like fear. His hand moved instinctively to where he kept his pistol. But Aggy didn't attack, didn't raise the whip, didn't do anything violent. She simply extended her arm and offered the whip back to him, handle first, respectful-like. But her eyes, Lord, her eyes were lightning and thunder and every storm that ever was. "This here," she said, voice low and steady and firm as iron, "ain't for beating people, sir." The silence that followed was absolute, total, the kind of silence that falls when the world shifts on its axis, when something that wasn't supposed to happen has happened, when the natural order of things has been disrupted. Silas Crowder stared at her, his face going red, then white, then red again. His hand trembled on his pistol. Behind him, field workers watched with held breath, knowing they were witnessing something momentous, something dangerous, something that would change everything. For a long moment, Crowder couldn't speak, couldn't process what had just occurred. An enslaved woman, a piece of property, had just spoken back to him, had just rejected his authority, had just, in her own quiet way, declared herself human. When he finally found his voice, it came out strangled, choked with rage. You dare?" He snatched the whip from her hand, his face contorted with fury. Then he grabbed Aggy by the arm hard enough to leave bruises and began dragging her toward his horse. "You gonna learn today," he shouted. "You gonna learn what happens to uppity slaves who forget their place. Master Thornton gonna hear about this. You gonna wish you was never born." Aggy didn't resist, didn't fight, just walked beside him with her head up, back straight, maintaining that terrible dignity that made Crowder even angrier. Isaiah, working at the forge within sight of the fields, saw what was happening, dropped his hammer and started running, but two other enslaved men grabbed him, held him back. "Don't," one hissed. "You can't help her. You'll just make it worse." "That's my wife," Isaiah struggled against them. "That's my wife. And you gonna be a dead man if you interfere, or sold away. Then what good you to her or them babies?" Isaiah stopped fighting, but tears ran down his face. Helpless, powerless, watching the woman he loved being dragged away to punishment and unable to do nothing about it. Crowder hauled Aggy all the way to the big house, up the steps, through the front door. Something enslaved folks never did unless called inside. He threw her down on the polished wood floor of Master Thornton's study, where the man sat at his desk reviewing ledgers. "Sir," Crowder was breathing hard, his face still red. "This slave here just defied me openly, in front of everyone. She talked back. She gave me this look like she was equal, like she had rights. It was insubordination of the highest order. Master Thornton looked up from his ledgers slowly. He was a man of 52 years, gray beard, cold blue eyes that had long ago stopped seeing enslaved people as human beings. To him, they were numbers in a ledger, investments, tools. "That true, Aggy?" he asked, voice mild but dangerous. Aggy, still on the floor, looked up. She could lie, could deny it, could grovel and beg, but something in her refused. "I gave him back his whip, sir," she said quietly. "Told him it wasn't for beating people." The room went cold. Master Thornton set down his pen carefully, stood up slowly, walked around his desk to stand over Aggy, looking down at her like a man studying an interesting insect. "You told him," he repeated slowly, "that his whip wasn't for beating people." "Yes, sir." "And you don't think that's his decision to make? You think you got some say in how this plantation is run?" "No, sir, you just nothing." His voice cracked like that whip. "You are property, Aggy. Property. You got no rights, no opinions, no voice. You exist to work, period. And when you forget that, when you get ideas above your station, you need to be reminded." He turned to Crowder. 2 days, 48 hours at the post, hands nailed, no water, no food. Let everyone see what happens to rebels. Crowder grinned, showing those rotten teeth. "Yes, sir. With pleasure, sir." Aggy felt ice flood through her veins. The whipping post. Hands nailed. 2 days. People died from less. "Sir," she said, and despite everything, her voice stayed steady. "I got 3 babies. They need—" "Should have thought about your babies before you decided to play hero," Thornton said coldly. "Take her." And that was it. No trial, no mercy, no appeal. Just the sentence of a man who owned her body and thought he owned her soul too. But as Crowder dragged her back outside, as he called for 2 other men to help him, as they began walking toward that terrible post that stood in the center of the quarters like a monument to suffering, Aggy held on to one thought. She had spoken. She had stood. She had looked evil in the eye and refused to bow completely. And no matter what came next, they couldn't take that away. That moment was hers, forever. They brought her to the post as the sun reached its highest point, when the heat was most cruel and all the enslaved folks was forced to stop their work and witness. The whipping post stood in the center of the quarters like a gravestone marking all the suffering that had come before. That thick oak trunk, 8 feet tall, was dark with old bloodstains that rain and time couldn't wash away. The wood was gouged with marks, fingernails scratched in agony, teeth marks from folks biting down on their own screams, dents from heads thrown back in pain. Master Thornton came to watch, sitting in a chair someone brought from the big house. He sipped lemonade like this was entertainment. His wife stood on the veranda in the distance, curious but too delicate to come closer. This was men's business, she'd say. This was discipline. This was necessary. Isaiah tried to reach Aggy before they took her, but Crowder's men held him back. His children, sweet Jesus, his children, were locked in the cabin with Mama Ruth, who pressed their faces against her chest so they couldn't see through the cracks in the walls. "Please," Isaiah begged, tears streaming down his face. "Please don't do this. I'll take her punishment. Nail my hands instead. Please." Master Thornton didn't even look at him. "Your wife made her choice. Now she pays for it. You want to join her?" Isaiah fell silent, choking on helplessness. They stripped Aggy's dress down to her waist in front of everyone. This was part of the punishment too. The humiliation, the exposure, the breaking down of dignity. But Aggy kept her head up, kept her eyes forward, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her shame. Her back was already marked with old scars. Every enslaved person had them. But these would be different. These would be a testament. 2 men held her arms outstretched against the post, while Silas Crowder brought out the nails. Long iron nails, thick as a finger, sharp enough to pierce flesh and wood both. In his other hand he carried a hammer. The gathered crowd, over 60 enslaved people forced to witness, stood in horrified silence. Some prayed quietly, some wept, some just stared with dead eyes, having seen this too many times before. Aggy of Bell Acre, Master Thornton announced, his voice carrying across the quarters. You have committed the sin of insubordination. You have forgotten your place. You have spoken against your betters. For this crime, you will remain at this post for 48 hours, hands nailed, as a lesson to all who might think themselves above their station. Crowder positioned Aggy's right hand flat against the wood, palm pressed to the oak. She felt the rough bark against her skin, felt the heat of the sun-warmed post, felt her heart pounding so hard, she thought it might burst. "Any last words, girl?" Crowder asked, his breath hot against her ear. "Any begging, any crying?" Aggy turned her head slightly, looked him dead in the eye, and said just one word: "No." Crowder's face twisted with rage. He positioned the nail at the center of her palm and raised the hammer. The first strike drove the nail through flesh, between the bones of her hand, deep into the wood. The pain was beyond description, white-hot, exploding, consuming. Aggy's whole body went rigid. Her mouth opened in a silent scream, but she made no sound, not one sound. The crowd gasped. Martha fainted. Young Dinah vomited. Crowder struck again, and again, driving the nail deep, anchoring Aggy's hand to the post like she was being crucified. Then he moved to the left hand. Isaiah collapsed to his knees, sobbing. Other men had to hold him up. The second nail went in the same way, positioned, struck, driven through flesh and into wood. Blood ran down both of Aggy's arms, dripping from her elbows, pooling at the base of the post. Her legs trembled but held. Her breath came in short, sharp gasps. Her eyes squeezed shut against the agony. But still, she made no sound. Crowder stepped back, breathing hard, disappointed that she hadn't screamed. Master Thornton stood up from his chair, walked closer, inspected his handiwork like a man examining a job well done. 48 hours, he repeated. If she survives, maybe she'll have learned something. If not, he shrugged. That's the cost of rebellion. They left her there. Left her standing on her own feet, arms stretched high and wide, hands nailed to the post, back exposed to the sun. Left her to the heat, to the thirst, to the pain, to the slow torture of time. The crowd was dismissed back to work. Master Thornton returned to his lemonade. Crowder rode off satisfied. Only Mama Ruth was allowed to stay close, sitting on the ground nearby, too old to work anyway. She began singing soft, a spiritual in Igbo, her mother tongue, a song of the ancestors. Ndina anyi, bikonyere anyi, aka. Our ancestors, please help us. The sun climbed higher. The heat became suffering terrible. Flies gathered, drawn by the blood. Aggy's legs began to shake from the strain of standing. Her hands screamed with pain. Her throat was parched within an hour, but she didn't break. Around mid-afternoon, when the sun was at its worst, Isaiah was allowed to approach briefly, only because Master Thornton permitted it, thinking it would add to Aggy's suffering to see her husband's anguish. "Aggy," Isaiah whispered, standing as close as he dared. I'm so sorry I couldn't stop this. Not your fault." Aggy's voice was barely audible, cracked and dry. "The children asking for you. Mama Ruth told them you sick, they don't understand. Tell them," she swallowed painfully. "Tell them Mama loves them. Tell them, be strong. You gonna survive this," Isaiah said fiercely, tears running down his face. "You hear me? You gonna survive, and we gonna grow old together and see our babies free someday. I swear it." "Enough," Crowder shouted from his porch. "Get back to work, blacksmith." Isaiah reached out like he wanted to touch her, then pulled back, knowing any contact would only bring more punishment. "I love you," he said. "Love you too," Aggy whispered. Then he was gone, and she was alone again with the sun and the pain and Mama Ruth's quiet singing. The afternoon stretched eternal. The pain in Aggy's hands went from acute to constant, to a dull throb that never stopped. Her arms cramped, her shoulders burned, her back, exposed to the direct sun, began to blister. Sweat poured off her, then stopped as dehydration set in. Her lips cracked and bled. Still she stood. As evening approached and the sun finally began to sink, Mama Ruth hobbled closer. "Child," she said soft, "you need to lean on the post. Take some weight off your feet. You can't stand straight for 2 days." But Aggy shook her head slightly. "If I lean, might never stand again." "Stubborn," Mama Ruth said, but there was pride in her voice. "Stubborn as your ancestors. A days would be proud." Night fell, the temperature dropped. Now instead of heat, there was cold. Aggy's sunburned back felt like it was on fire while her front shivered. Mosquitoes came in clouds, biting her exposed skin, drinking from her wounds. She couldn't even wave them away. In the darkness, she heard movement. Footsteps approaching, careful-like. A hand pressed a wet cloth to her lips. Just for a moment, just a few drops of water before whoever it was had to flee. This happened 3 times during the night. Different people, taking terrible risks to give her a moment of mercy. This was resistance too, small, secret, dangerous. Mama Ruth stayed the whole night, wrapped in a thin blanket, sitting vigil like she was guarding something sacred. And maybe she was. Maybe Aggy's refusal to break was sacred. Maybe her willingness to pay this price for one moment of dignity was the most holy thing that had happened on Bell Acre in years. As dawn approached on the second day, Aggy's vision began to blur. Fever set in. The wounds in her hands was infected already. She could feel the heat radiating from them, smell the sickness. Her body was shutting down. She began to drift in and out of consciousness. In her delirium, she saw visions. Mama Ruth young again, standing on the deck of a slave ship, throwing herself overboard rather than arrive in chains. A woman with a crown made of lightning, speaking in a language Aggy couldn't understand, but somehow knew. A queen, an ancestor, a warrior. Her children grown and free, walking without chains, reading books, owning land. And Isaiah, old and gray, sitting by a fire, telling their grandchildren the story of the woman who wouldn't break. "Hold on, child." Mama Ruth's voice pulled her back. "Just a little longer, you almost through it." But Aggy didn't know if she could hold on. The pain, the thirst, the fever. It was too much. Her body was giving out. Still, she held on. Because letting go meant they'd won. Meant they'd broken her. Meant her moment of resistance had been for nothing. So she held on. Through the second day, as the sun rose again, merciless. Through the heat and the flies and the agony. Through the moments when death seemed like a mercy she'd welcome, she held on. And when the 48 hours finally ended, when they came to pull the nails out, she was still standing. The first night at the post was when hell opened its mouth and showed Aggy what true suffering meant. As the sun sank below the Virginia hills, painting the sky blood red like it was ashamed of what it had witnessed, the temperature dropped fast. The brutal heat that had blistered Aggy's back gave way to a cold that cut through her like knives. Her body, already in shock from the trauma, began to shiver uncontrollably. But she couldn't wrap her arms around herself, couldn't seek warmth, couldn't do nothing but stand there and endure. The shivering made everything worse. Every tremor sent fresh waves of agony through her nailed hands. The movement pulled at the wounds, made them bleed fresh. She could feel the blood running warm down her arms again, feel it dripping from her elbows. "Lord Jesus," Mama Ruth whispered from her spot on the ground nearby. "Lord Jesus, give her strength." The old woman had gathered a thin blanket and was wrapped in it, but she couldn't share it with Aggy. Master Thornton's orders was clear. No one was to help the prisoner. Anyone who tried would join her at the post. So Mama Ruth could only watch, could only pray, could only bear witness to this crucifixion. As full darkness fell, the mosquitoes came. They rose from the damp earth in clouds, drawn by the scent of blood and exposed flesh. They covered Aggy's face, her neck, her back, her arms. Every inch of skin became a landing place for these tiny demons. They bit and bit and bit, and she couldn't swat them away, couldn't even shake her head properly without sending lightning bolts of pain through her hands. Her face swelled, her eyes puffed up until she could barely see. The itching was almost worse than the pain. Almost. It drove her near mad. That sensation of 1,000 tiny creatures feasting on her while she hung helpless. "Sing, Mama Ruth." Aggy whispered through cracked lips. "Please, sing." And Mama Ruth sang. Sang the old songs from across the water. Sang spirituals that carried coded messages of freedom. Sang lullabies she'd sung to Aggy when she was small. Her voice was old and cracked, but it was something. Something to focus on besides the pain, besides the fear, besides the slow realization that she might actually die here. "Wade in the water, wade in the water, children. Wade in the water, God's gonna trouble the water." The song floated through the dark quarters and other voices joined in from the cabins. Quiet voices, careful not to draw the overseer's wrath. But there, a choir of the enslaved, singing their sister through her torment. Around midnight, the rain came. At first, Aggy thought it might be a mercy, water to drink, cool relief from the fever building in her body. But this wasn't gentle rain. This was a Virginia thunderstorm coming down in sheets driven by wind that felt like fists. The rain soaked her, chilled her to the bone. It pounded against her ruined back, making the blisters scream. It ran into her mouth and nose, nearly drowning her when she tried to drink. It turned the ground beneath her feet to mud, making her legs slip and slide, forcing her to fight even harder to stay upright. Lightning cracked across the sky. Thunder rolled. The post she was nailed to seemed to tremble. "Please," Aggy prayed, though she didn't know what she was praying for anymore. Please. Was she praying to live? To die? To be free? To see her children one more time? She didn't know. Her mind was starting to fragment, to drift, to separate from her body in self-defense. And that's when the visions started. She saw her father, the man she'd never known, sold away when she was an infant. He stood before her, tall and strong, with kind eyes. He reached out like he wanted to touch her face. "You got my strength, daughter," he said. "You got my refusal to bow. I'm sorry I couldn't give you more." "Daddy," Aggy whispered, but he was already fading. She saw her sister, the one who died at birth, the one Mama Ruth rarely spoke of. A little girl with Aggy's eyes, laughing and playing in a field of flowers that didn't exist anywhere in Virginia. "Come play with me, sister," the child called. "It don't hurt here, it's nice here." "I can't," Aggy said. "I got babies, I got Isaiah, I can't leave yet." The child smiled sadly and vanished. She saw the ancestors, a long line of them, stretching back through time. Warriors and queens, survivors of the Middle Passage, mothers who'd had their children ripped away, fathers who'd been worked to death, all of them standing witness, all of them lending their strength. "We carried you here," they seemed to say without words. "Now you carry us forward. Stand, daughter, stand." Mama Ruth heard Aggy speaking in tongues, sometimes in English, sometimes in words that sounded like Igbo or Yoruba or other African languages she'd never learned but somehow knew. The old woman recognized it for what it was: spirit possession, ancestors riding their daughter, giving her the strength to endure. "That's right," Mama Ruth whispered. "Let them in, child. Let them carry you." The rain finally stopped around 3 in the morning. Aggy was soaked, shivering, delirious with pain and fever. Her hands had swollen to twice their normal size around the nails. The infection was spreading fast. She could feel it like poison moving through her veins. In the terrible quiet after the storm, she heard movement in the darkness. Footsteps approaching, soft and cautious. It was Martha, the woman who worked beside her in the fields. She carried a tin cup with a rag soaked in water. "I know I ain't supposed to," Martha whispered, looking around fearfully. "But I can't just watch you die, Aggy. I can't." She pressed the wet rag to Aggy's lips. The water was warm and tasted of tin, but it was life itself. Aggy sucked at it desperately, getting maybe 3 swallows before Martha had to pull it away. "Thank you," Aggy whispered. "Your babies. Thank them." "Hush now, save your strength." Martha melted back into the darkness as quickly as she'd come, risking her own back to show mercy. 20 minutes later, someone else came. A man Aggy barely knew brought her a piece of cornbread that she couldn't eat. Her throat was too swollen, her stomach too roiled. But the gesture itself was food for her spirit, and an hour after that, young Dinah came, the pregnant girl from the fields, and sang a lullaby, soft and sweet, the same one her own mother had sung to her before she'd been sold away. This was how they resisted, not with violence or escape or dramatic gestures, but with small mercies in the night, with shared suffering, with the refusal to let the masters make them cruel to each other. As dawn approached, painting the sky gray, then pink, then gold, Aggy was still alive. Barely. Her body was shutting down, her mind drifting in and out of consciousness, but her legs were still locked beneath her, her hands were still nailed to the post, and her spirit, Lord have mercy, her spirit was still burning. Mama Ruth struggled to her feet as the sun rose, her old joints protesting. She shuffled close to Aggy, looked up at her granddaughter's ruined face. "First night done, child," she said soft. "One more to go. You hear me? Just one more night." Aggy's eyes fluttered open. They were bloodshot, swollen nearly shut, but still held that lightning. "Still here," she whispered. "Still standing." "That's my warrior," Mama Ruth said, tears running down her weathered cheeks. "That's a Daisy's blood. You show them, child, you show them what we're made of." As the plantation began to wake, as the bell rang and folks stumbled out to another day of bondage, as Master Thornton ate his breakfast and Silas Crowder saddled his horse, as life went on like a woman wasn't dying in the center of the quarters, Aggy lifted her head a little higher, because if she was gonna die here, she'd die standing, she'd die unbroken, she'd die having looked evil in the eye and said no, and maybe, just maybe, that meant she'd won. Even in death, she'd won. The second sun rose like the eye of judgment itself, red and angry and merciless. Aggy's body had passed beyond ordinary pain into something else entirely. Her hands was swollen grotesque around the iron nails, the flesh purple and weeping infection. Her legs trembled constant now, muscles screaming from holding her upright for over 24 hours. Her back, burned raw by yesterday's sun and beaten by last night's storm, had begun to crack and bleed in places where the skin split. But worse than all of that was the thirst. Her tongue had swollen thick in her mouth, dry as old leather. Her lips was cracked so deep they bled constant. Her throat felt like it was closing, every breath a struggle. The few drops of water the night visitors had brought wasn't near enough. Her body was shutting down from dehydration, organs beginning to fail. "Water," she croaked, barely audible. "Please." But there was no mercy coming, not in daylight, not where the overseer could see. Silas Crowder rode by on his morning rounds, stopping his horse near the post. He looked up at Aggy with satisfaction, seeing her reduced to this, barely human, barely alive, a lesson for all to see. "Still standing, I see," he said, voice mocking. "Tough old cow, ain't you? But you'll break, they all break eventually." Aggy couldn't respond, didn't have the strength. But somewhere deep inside, in that place where her spirit lived, she heard Mama Ruth's voice from years ago. "You got warrior blood, no master can take that from you." Crowder spit tobacco juice on the ground near her feet and rode on. The morning wore on, eternal. The sun climbed higher, hotter than yesterday if that was possible. It beat down on Aggy's exposed back like hammer blows, each ray of light another torture. Her skin blistered worse, some blisters bursting and weeping clear fluid that attracted more flies. The flies was everywhere now. They crawled on her wounds, laid eggs in the infected flesh of her hands, buzzed around her face. She couldn't wave them away, couldn't even shake her head without sending spikes of agony through her whole body. From the fields nearby, she could hear the work going on, the sound of cutting tools through tobacco leaves, the creak of wagon wheels, the occasional shout from an overseer. Life continuing while she died slowly in the center of it all. Around midday, Master Thornton came out again with visitors. Other plantation owners from neighboring counties come to see his discipline methods. They stood at a respectful distance, drinking sweet tea, discussing her like she was a horse or a piece of farm equipment. 48 hours with nailed hands, Thornton was saying proudly. Haven't lost one yet to this punishment, though they come mighty close. The key is to use the right size nails. Too thin and they tear out, too thick and you kill them too quick. And you nail between the bones, see? Through the soft parts of the hand. Painful as hell, but not immediately fatal. And what was her crime? One visitor asked. Insubordination, talked back to my overseer. Can't let that kind of thing slide or they all start getting ideas. Quite right, quite right. Got to maintain order. It's for their own good, really. They're like children, need firm guidance. Aggy heard all this through her delirium. Heard them discussing her torture like it was agricultural science, like she wasn't human. Like her agony was just data in an experiment about breaking wills. Something hot and bitter rose in her chest. Not just pain now, but rage. Pure, burning rage that momentarily cut through the fog of suffering. She lifted her head. Lord, it took everything she had, and looked directly at Master Thornton and his guests. Her eyes, swollen and bloodshot as they was, still held fire. I see you, she whispered, voice like grinding stones. God sees you. The men fell silent, disturbed by something in her gaze, something that suggested that even here, even now she was judging them and finding them wanting. Still got spirit, one man muttered nervously. That's unsettling. It'll pass, Thornton said, but he didn't sound as confident as before. By tonight, she'll be begging for death. They left quickly after that, their tea suddenly less sweet. As afternoon shadows began to lengthen, Aggy felt herself slipping away. The dehydration, the infection, the exhaustion, it was too much. Her vision tunneled. Her hearing faded in and out. Time became meaningless. She saw her children in her mind. Jonah with his serious eyes, little Sam with his sweet smile, Lily with her fierce spirit. She tried to hold on to their faces, tried to remember their voices, but they kept slipping away like water through her fingers. Mama's sorry, she whispered to the ghosts in her mind. Mama tried to show you how to stand, but I don't know if I can anymore. I don't know. You can, came Mama Ruth's voice from below. The old woman had been there the whole time, never leaving, bearing witness through it all. You already shown them, child. You already done what needed doing. You stood. You didn't bow. That's enough. That's more than enough. I'm tired, Mama Ruth. So tired. I know, baby. I know. But just a little longer. Sun's going down soon. One more night. Then they'll take you down. Then you can rest. Will I survive? Mama Ruth was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, child. I truly don't know. But whether you live or die, you'll do it with your head up. You'll do it having shown every soul on this plantation what courage looks like. And that's something they can never take away. The sun sank lower, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. Beautiful colors for an ugly day. As darkness approached, Aggy's body began to fail in earnest. Her legs finally buckled. She hung now by her nailed hands, her full weight pulling on those iron spikes through her palms. The pain was beyond description, beyond human capacity to endure, and yet she endured. Because somewhere in her broken body, her spirit still burned. Smaller now, maybe just an ember instead of a flame, but burning still, unextinguished, undefeated. When the 48 hours finally ended, when Silas Crowder approached the post with his tools to pull the nails, Aggy was barely conscious. Her body hung limp, suspended by those iron spikes through her palms. Her legs had given out hours ago. Her breathing was shallow, rattling in her chest like death was already settling in. Her eyes was closed, face swollen beyond recognition from the mosquito bites and sun damage. She dead? One of Crowder's men asked, nervous-like. Crowder poked her with the handle of his hammer. Aggy's eyes fluttered open just barely. Not yet. Tough bitch. Master Thornton gonna be pleased she survived. Makes him look good. They brought a ladder. Isaiah was there too. They'd let him come to help carry her body back to the cabin. His face was haggard, eyes red from 2 days of crying and helplessness. When he saw her up close, saw what they'd done to his wife, he made a sound like a wounded animal. Easy now, Crowder said, positioning the ladder. We gotta pull the nails out careful. Don't want to tear the hands complete off. She still gotta work eventually. He climbed up with his tools, pliers and a small pry bar. Martha and 2 other women stood nearby with cloths and water, ready to tend the wounds. "This gonna hurt like hellfire," Crowder said, not unkindly for once. Even he seemed slightly awed by what Aggy had endured. "But you already know about her, don't you, Aggy?" He gripped the first nail with the pliers, started working it back and forth, loosening it from the wood. The movement sent fresh agony through Aggy's hand. She made a small sound, the first cry of pain she'd allowed herself in 48 hours. "Almost got it," Crowder muttered. "Come on, you stubborn piece of—" The nail came free with a wet, sucking sound. Blood and pus poured from the wound. Aggy's hand, suddenly released, flopped down limp. The damage was catastrophic. The nail had torn through tendons, crushed bones, destroyed the intricate machinery of her palm. Isaiah caught her arm as it fell, cradling it gentle. Tears streamed down his face. "I got you, Aggy. I got you, baby." Crowder moved to the second nail. This one was harder. It had bent slightly when it was driven in, and now it wouldn't come straight out. He had to work it, twisting and pulling, each movement making Aggy's body convulse with pain. "Please," Isaiah begged, "please be careful. Please don't hurt her more." "Shut up, blacksmith, I'm doing the best I can." Finally, the second nail came free. Aggy's left hand dropped like the right one, useless and ruined. 2 men on the ladder caught her body as she fell forward, no longer held up by the nails. They lowered her down careful, Isaiah taking her weight, crushing her against his chest like he could protect her now even though he was 2 days too late. "Aggy," he sobbed. "Aggy, I'm here. I'm here. You safe now." But she wasn't conscious anymore. Her body had endured all it could. Soon as those nails came out, she'd let go, falling into a darkness that might be sleep or might be death. Time would tell which. They carried her to the cabin. Later on the straw mattress, Mama Ruth immediately began working on the wounds, cleaning them with water and whiskey, the only antiseptic they had. The hands was destroyed. Even Mama Ruth, who'd tended countless whip wounds and broken bones over the years, looked grim. "These hands ain't never gonna work right again," she said quietly. "Too much damage. Bones crushed, tendons torn. She'll be lucky if she can hold a spoon, much less work tobacco." "Will she live?" Isaiah asked, his voice breaking. "I don't know, son. Infection's deep, fever's high. Next few days will tell. But I'll say this, if will alone can keep someone alive, Aggy gonna make it. That woman got a spirit harder than iron." The children was brought in, finally allowed to see their mama. They crowded around the mattress, crying, scared. Jonah touched her arm gentle like she was made of glass. Little Sam buried his face in Isaiah's leg. And Lily, fierce little Lily, climbed up on the mattress and laid her head on her mama's chest, listening to her heartbeat. "Mama sleeping?" she asked. "Yes, baby," Isaiah said. "Mama's sleeping. She's very tired." "Why her hands all wrapped up?" She got hurt, honey. But Mama Ruth gonna make her better." Through the night, they kept vigil. Mama Ruth changed the bandages every few hours, each time revealing hands that looked worse instead of better. The fingers was bent at wrong angles, the palms was swollen huge. The infection spread up the wrists, making red lines track toward her elbows. Blood poisoning, moving slow but steady toward her heart. They forced water down her throat when she was semi-conscious, fed her broth made from scraps, sang spirituals and prayed to every god and ancestor they could name. And somehow, Aggy's heart kept beating. By the 3rd day after the post, the fever broke. Her eyes opened, focused on Isaiah's face hovering above her. "You alive," he whispered, crying again. "Thank God you alive." Aggy tried to speak, but her throat was too raw. Tried to lift her hands, but they wouldn't respond. She looked down at the bundled bandages where her hands should be, saw the damage, understood what it meant. Her hands, her strong hands that had cut tobacco and held babies and touched her husband's face. Ruined, twisted, broken beyond repair. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, tears ran down Aggy's cheeks. Not tears of pain or fear or regret, tears of grief. For what was lost, for what would never be again. "I'm sorry," Isaiah whispered. I'm so sorry." But Aggy shook her head slightly, worked her damaged throat until words came. "Not your fault. Never your fault." Mama Ruth leaned in close. "You still here, child. That's what matters. You still alive. You still got fight in you." And despite everything, despite the ruined hands, despite the scars that would mark her forever, despite the price she'd paid, Aggy managed something that might have been a smile. Because she'd done it. She'd stood for 48 hours with her hands nailed to that post, and she hadn't broken, hadn't begged, hadn't apologized. She'd looked evil in the face and said no. And now everyone on Bell Acre knew. Aggy might have broken hands, but her spirit was whole. Master Thornton had tried to break her. Silas Crowder had tried to break her. The sun and the whip and the nails had tried to break her. And they'd failed. In the quarters that night, folks whispered her name with something new in their voices, something that hadn't been there before. Respect, awe, maybe even hope. Because if Aggy could survive that, what else might be possible? What other impossible things might they dare to believe in? Something shifted on Bell Acre after Aggy came down from that post. It was subtle at first, barely noticeable, like the first cracks in a dam before the flood. But those who paid attention, those who understood the invisible currents of power and resistance, they felt it. The fear had changed sides. Silas Crowder noticed it first. 3 days after pulling the nails from Aggy's hands, he rode through the tobacco fields on his morning rounds, whip coiled at his side as always. But when he raised his voice to shout at a woman working too slow, she didn't flinch like she used to. Didn't cower. Just looked at him for a heartbeat. One heartbeat too long before going back to work. It unsettled him, made him feel exposed somehow. He rode to where a group of men worked, found one of them resting against his hoe. In the old days, the days before Aggy's stand, he would have immediately lashed out with his whip, made an example. But now he hesitated, because these men had watched Aggy survive what should have killed her. Had watched her refuse to break, and something in their eyes suggested they was calculating different now. Calculating what they might endure, what they might survive, what they might dare. "Get back to work," Crowder said, but his voice lacked its usual bite. The man straightened up, but slow, deliberately slow. A tiny rebellion, barely visible, but rebellion nonetheless. Crowder rode away without using his whip. In the quarters, folks talked in whispers. About Aggy's hands, yes, about how they was twisted and scarred and would never work right again. But more than that, they talked about her spirit, about how she'd stood, about how she'd looked Master Thornton in the eye even while nailed to that post. "She showed us something," old Abraham said one evening, gathered with other men behind the cabins where overseers couldn't hear. "Showed us they can hurt our bodies, but they can't touch what lives inside unless we let them." "Easy to say," another man countered. "Aggy paid a terrible price. Her hands is ruined. She can't work proper no more. What happens when Master Thornton decides she ain't useful? Then we protect her," Martha said firmly. The women had their own gathering nearby, voices low but fierce. "We work a little harder, make up for what she can't do. We don't let them justify selling her or worse." "And her babies?" young Dinah asked, one hand on her pregnant belly. "What about them?" "We watch them too. We all watch each other. That's how we survive." This was new. This collective protectiveness, this shared defiance. It had always existed in small ways. The night visitors bringing water to Aggy at the post, the secret spirituals with coded messages. But now it was crystallizing into something more organized, more conscious, more dangerous to the masters. Mama Ruth saw it and felt her old heart swell with pride and fear both. Pride because this was what resistance looked like when it took root. Fear because she knew how the masters would respond when they realized what was happening. And they would realize, eventually. Aggy herself recovered slowly. Her body healed faster than her hands. The sun-damaged back scabbed over, the dehydration resolved. The fever finally broke complete. But her hands, Lord have mercy. Her hands was a different story. Even after weeks, they remained twisted. The fingers wouldn't straighten proper. The palms couldn't grip nothing heavier than a piece of cloth. Simple tasks she'd done all her life, tying a knot, holding a knife, braiding her daughter's hair, now beyond her capability. Isaiah made her special tools, wrapped cloth around handles so she could grip them better, fashioned a brace for her left hand that gave it some stability, did everything he could to help her adapt. But both of them knew the truth. Aggy couldn't do field work no more. Couldn't meet her quota. Couldn't earn her keep in the master's eyes. Master Thornton called Isaiah to the big house 6 weeks after the nailing. The blacksmith came with his hat in his hands, heart pounding with dread. "Your wife," Thornton said without preamble. "She's useless to me now. Can't work tobacco, can't do much of anything with those hands. I'm considering my options." Isaiah felt ice flood his veins. "Options, sir?" "Selling her, or—" Thornton paused, letting the unspoken alternative hang in the air. The alternative where damaged, useless slaves sometimes just disappeared. "But I'm a reasonable man. Christian man. I'll give you a chance to make her worth keeping. Anything, sir. Anything. You work double. You and Aggy together was worth 2 workers to me. Now she's worth nothing. You make up the difference. Forge work during the day, field work at night if needed, and I'll let her stay." It was an impossible demand. Working the forge alone was backbreaking. Adding field work on top would kill Isaiah within months. But what choice did he have? "Yes, sir," he said. "I'll do it." "Good. And Isaiah? One more thing. That wife of yours caused quite a stir with her little display of defiance. I see any more signs of uppity behavior from her or anyone influenced by her. And she goes. Immediately. You understand?" "Yes, sir." I thought I was making an example with that punishment, showing everyone what happens to rebels. But somehow it had the opposite effect. People looking at her different now. Looking at all of us different. That stops. Or there will be consequences. Isaiah returned to the quarters with a heavy heart, told Aggy what had transpired. She listened with those fierce eyes, her twisted hands folded in her lap. "You can't work yourself to death for me," she said quietly. "What else I'm gonna do? Let them sell you? Let you disappear? Maybe that's the price of what I done. Maybe I should have kept my head down, kept quiet." "Don't." Isaiah gripped her shoulders. "Don't you dare regret standing up. Don't you dare wish you'd stayed silent. What you did was braver than anything I ever seen. You showed our children what dignity looks like. You showed everyone that we're human, that we got souls they can't touch. Don't you take that back now." Aggy's eyes filled with tears. But the cost was worth it. Is worth it. Will always be worth it. They held each other in the dim cabin, 2 people trying to survive an impossible situation with their humanity intact. Outside, night fell on Bell Acre. In the quarters, folks went to sleep on hard floors and thin mattresses. In the big house, Master Thornton drank his whiskey and reviewed his ledgers. In his cabin, Silas Crowder cleaned his whip and wondered why it felt less powerful in his hands than it used to. And in the darkness, in the invisible spaces between the structures and the silences, something was growing. A seed Aggy had planted with her blood and her refusal to break. It would take time to grow, would face harsh conditions, might get cut down before it could flower, but it was there, growing in the shadows, waiting. The blow came on a cold morning in November, 3 months after Aggy's punishment. Isaiah had been working himself near to death, just like he'd promised Master Thornton. Dawn to dusk at the forge, hammering iron until his arms felt like they'd fall off. Then, when other folks was settling in for the night, he'd head to the fields for another 4 hours of labor, digging, hauling, whatever needed doing. He'd stumble back to the cabin past midnight, collapse beside Aggy for a few hours of restless sleep, then rise before dawn to do it all again. His body was giving out. He'd lost weight, his hands trembled from exhaustion, his cough was getting worse. But he kept going because the alternative was losing Aggy, and that was unthinkable. "You killing yourself," Aggy told him one night, her twisted hands touching his face gentle as she could. "This ain't sustainable, Isaiah. This ain't living." "As long as we're together," he said, voice hoarse. As long as I can keep you and the babies safe, we ain't safe. We never been safe. We enslaved, Isaiah. Safety ain't something we get to have. But he wouldn't hear it. Kept pushing, kept working, kept trying to be enough for two people. Then came the morning Master Thornton's son arrived from Richmond. James Thornton was 25, recently married, setting up his own plantation 2 counties over. He'd come to Bell Acre to purchase some of his father's stock, enslaved workers to staff his new property. And he'd heard about Isaiah, the skilled blacksmith who could forge anything. "I need a good smith," James told his father over breakfast. "Someone who knows his craft. Trained workers are expensive at auction. But if you've got one here already." Old Master Thornton considered. Isaiah was valuable, yes, but he was also the husband of that troublemaking woman, the one who'd caused such a stir with her defiance, the one who, despite her ruined hands, still carried herself with too much dignity, still looked at him with those eyes that saw too much. Maybe separating them would break her spirit where the whipping post couldn't. "I can spare the blacksmith," he said slowly, "but he's worth good money. You'll pay fair price." "Of course, father. Family discount naturally, but fair." The deal was struck over eggs and bacon. 2 lives destroyed while white men ate breakfast. Isaiah was called to the big house that afternoon. Aggy knew something was wrong the moment she saw Crowder heading toward the forge. She struggled to her feet. Her hands couldn't do much, but her legs still worked, and followed at a distance. By the time she reached the big house, Isaiah was already on the porch, face ashen, hands shaking. Master Thornton stood beside his son, papers in hand. "You've been sold to my son James," Thornton was saying. "You'll leave tomorrow morning for his plantation in Nottoway County. It's a good opportunity for you, new forge, new work. You should be grateful." Isaiah's voice came out strangled. But my family, sir, my wife, my children, will remain here. They're my property, not yours. You don't get to negotiate the terms of your own sale, boy. Please." Isaiah dropped to his knees on the porch, a grown man reduced to begging. "Please don't separate us. I'll work harder, I'll do anything, just don't." "It's done. Sale's final. You leave at dawn." Aggy stepped forward from where she'd been watching in horror. "No," she said, her voice loud and clear. "No, you can't do this. You can't just tear families apart like—" Silas Crowder grabbed her arm, yanking her back. "Shut your mouth, woman. You caused enough trouble already." "I'll go with him," Aggy shouted, struggling against Crowder's grip. "Sell me too. Sell all of us, just don't separate the family." Master Thornton looked at her with cold contempt. You're barely worth the food you eat with those useless hands. No one would buy you. And your children? They're too young to be worth anything yet. They stay here until they're old enough to work proper. Then maybe I'll sell them too. Separately, probably. Get more money that way." The cruelty was calculated, deliberate, designed to break Aggy completely. Isaiah was crying openly now, still on his knees. "Please, Master Thornton, I'm begging you, don't do this. Don't take me from my family. I'll die without them. They're everything. You'll live. Slaves always live. You're tougher than you think. Now get back to the forge and finish today's work. You leave tomorrow whether you're ready or not." Isaiah stumbled down the porch steps. Aggy broke free from Crowder and ran to him, her twisted hands reaching for him even though she couldn't properly hold him. They stood there in the yard, clinging to each other, both crying, both broken. "This is my fault," Aggy sobbed. "My fault for defying them, for standing up, for—" "No!" Isaiah gripped her tight despite her ruined hands between them. "Don't you ever say that. Don't you ever regret what you did. This is their evil, not yours. They chose this. They chose to be monsters. What we gonna do? How we gonna survive without you? Same way we always survived. You're the strongest person I know, Aggy. You'll protect our babies. You'll teach them everything I couldn't. You'll—" His voice broke. "You'll tell them their daddy loved them. Tell them every single day." That night, the quarters mourned with them. Folks brought what little food they could spare, sat with the family in their cabin, sang soft spirituals about separation and loss and the cruelty of bondage. Mama Ruth held Aggy while she wept. "This is what they do, child. They use love as a weapon. They know the strongest chains ain't on our ankles, they're around our hearts. The children didn't fully understand. Jonah, now 6, knew Daddy was leaving but thought maybe he'd come back. Little Sam, 4, just cried because everyone else was crying. And Lily, barely 3, kept asking, "Why Daddy sad?" Until Aggy couldn't answer anymore. Isaiah held each child that night, memorizing their faces, their voices, their small bodies pressed against his, knowing he might never see them grow up, might never know who they became. At dawn, a wagon arrived. James Thornton sat in the driver's seat, impatient to get started. Isaiah was given 5 minutes to say goodbye. He kissed Aggy one last time, tasting salt from both their tears. "I love you," he whispered. "I will always love you. No distance can change that, no time can erase it. You're in my soul, Aggy, forever." "I love you," she said back, her voice breaking. "Find a way back to us. Somehow, someday. Promise me you'll try. I promise. I swear on everything holy, I'll try." He kissed each child, held them tight, then climbed into the wagon before his courage failed. As the wagon pulled away, Aggy stood in the yard with her children, watching the man she loved disappear down the road. Jonah stood silent and stoic, trying to be the man of the family now. Sam sobbed into Aggy's skirt. Lily waved, calling, "Bye, Daddy." "Bye-bye." And Aggy felt something inside her crack wider than when the nails went through her hands. This pain was deeper, this loss more permanent. But even through her grief, even through her rage at the injustice, she made herself a promise. She would survive, would raise her children, would keep Isaiah's memory alive in them, would resist in whatever small way she could every single day. Because that's what he would want. That's what she owed him. That's what love demanded. The wagon disappeared over the horizon. Isaiah was gone. But Aggy was still standing. Broken, grieving, but standing. Always standing. The winter of 1838 was the coldest anyone could remember, and Aggy moved through it like a ghost. Without Isaiah, the cabin felt empty even with Mama Ruth and the children there. Without her hands working proper, Aggy couldn't do field labor, couldn't earn her keep in Master Thornton's eyes. She was relegated to light duties, watching small children while their mothers worked, sweeping the big house floors with a broom she could barely grip, mending clothes by holding the needle awkward between her twisted fingers. It was humiliating work for someone who'd once been one of the strongest workers on the plantation. But humiliation was better than being sold away from her babies. The children struggled without their father. Jonah grew quieter, more withdrawn, his young shoulders carrying a weight no 7-year-old should bear. Little Sam had nightmares, waking screaming for his daddy. And Lily, fierce Lily, started acting out, defiant and angry at a world she was too young to understand but old enough to hate. "Mama, when Daddy coming back?" she'd ask every night. "I don't know, baby. Someday, maybe. We gotta have faith." But faith was getting harder to hold on to. Then 2 months after Isaiah left, something happened that changed everything. A new overseer arrived at Bell Acre. His name was Virgil Hayes, and he made Silas Crowder look merciful by comparison. Hayes was a man of 30, hard-faced and cruel-eyed, who'd been fired from his last plantation for excessive brutality, which was saying something in a world built on brutality. Master Thornton hired him specifically to restore order after what he saw as Aggy's corrupting influence on the other enslaved folks. Hayes's first day, he gathered everyone in the yard and made his position clear. "I heard there's been some slack discipline here," he announced, his voice carrying across the assembled crowd. "Some of you getting ideas above your station, thinking you're something special. That ends today. I don't care what happened before I got here. I don't care about your stories or your pride or your feelings. Your property. You work, you obey, or you suffer. Simple as that." His eyes found Aggy in the crowd, lingered on her twisted hands, smiled coldly. "I heard about you," he said directly to her. "The woman who thought she was too good for discipline. who survived the post and got treated like some kind of hero by these other fools. Let me make something clear. You ain't special. You're just stubborn, and stubbornness I can break." Aggy met his eyes, said nothing, but something in her gaze made Hayes' smile falter for just a heartbeat. That night in the quarters, folks gathered in Martha's cabin, the largest one, where secret meetings sometimes happened when the overseers was sleeping. "This Hayes worse than Crowder," Abraham whispered. "Way worse, he gonna make our lives hell." "So what we do?" young Thomas asked. He was 19, strong, angry. "Just take it? Just bow down and let him terrorize us? What choice we got?" Martha said bitterly. "Fight back and we die, run and we get caught, brought back, punished worse than death." Aggy sat in the corner, her twisted hands folded in her lap, listening. She'd been quiet since Isaiah left, keeping her head down, trying not to cause more trouble. But something about Hayes, about his cruelty, about his assumption that they'd just submit, woke something in her that had been sleeping. "There's always choice," she said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. "What you mean?" Abraham asked. "I mean, we don't gotta fight big, don't gotta run, don't gotta do nothing dramatic, but we can resist, small ways, everyday ways, ways that hurt them without them knowing it's us." "Like what?" Thomas leaned forward, interested. Aggy's eyes glinted in the candlelight. "Like tools breaking at convenient times. Like work going slower when no one's watching close. Like salt accidentally getting in the master's sugar jar. Like gossip spreading about Hayes that makes other white folks look at him sideways. Like standing together so they can't pick us off one by one." "That's dangerous talk, Aggy," Martha warned. "They catch us sabotaging. They gotta prove it first, and they gotta catch us, which they won't if we're smart, if we're careful, if we look out for each other." The room fell silent. This was a turning point. Everyone felt it. "I'm in," Thomas said finally. "I'm tired of being scared all the time. Rather die fighting, even if it's small fighting, than live like a whipped dog." "Me too," said Dinah, her baby now 6 months old on her hip. "For my son. So maybe he grows up knowing his mama had some spine." One by one, others agreed. Not everyone, some was too scared, too beaten down, too worried about the consequences. But enough. Maybe a dozen folks committed to this quiet resistance. Mama Ruth watched from her corner, a small smile on her weathered face. This was what Aggy's stand at the post had planted. Not immediate freedom, not dramatic escape, but something subtler and perhaps more dangerous. The belief that they had agency, that they could push back, even in small ways. Over the next weeks, strange things started happening on Bell Acre. Hayes's favorite horse went lame, something about a stone bruise that wouldn't heal. The lock on the smokehouse mysteriously broke, and several hams went missing before it was discovered. A wagon wheel cracked at a crucial moment, spilling a load of tobacco into the mud. The well water near the big house tasted funny for a week until they figured out someone had dumped ash in it. Nothing could be traced back to anyone specific. Nothing was dramatic enough to warrant severe punishment. But the cumulative effect was real. Master Thornton's profits dipped. Hayes's authority was undermined, and the enslaved folks walked with slightly straighter backs. Hayes knew something was happening. He could feel it. But he couldn't prove nothing. Couldn't catch nobody. Couldn't stop it. And it made him furious. "Someone's organizing this," he told Master Thornton one evening. "Someone's behind all these accidents. Then find out who and make an example." I got my suspicions. Hayes's eyes were cold. "That Aggy woman. Ever since she survived your little punishment, folks been different. Looking to her, taking cues from her. She's the problem. Then solve it." Hayes smiled. "With pleasure." The trap was set. Aggy didn't know it yet, but her small victory was about to cost her everything. Again. Spring came to Virginia like a cruel joke. All blooming flowers and sweet air, while suffering continued unabated in the quarters. Aggy's daughter Lily was 4 years old now, bright and fierce and beautiful. She had her mother's lightning eyes and her father's gentle heart. and she moved through the world like she owned it. Climbing trees, catching frogs, asking questions that made adults uncomfortable. "Mama, why we slaves?" she asked one morning while Aggy struggled to braid her hair with twisted fingers. "Because white folks decided they could own us, baby. Decided wrong, but they got the power to make it so. That ain't fair." "No, honey, it ain't. When I grow up, I'm gonna make it fair. I'm gonna be free and make everyone free." Aggy's heart broke and swelled at the same time. You got your daddy's dreams and your mama's stubbornness. Lord, help the world when you grown. She didn't know how little time she had left with her baby girl. Virgil Hayes had been watching the family for weeks, looking for leverage. He knew Aggy was behind the resistance. Couldn't prove it exactly, but he knew it in his bones. And he knew the best way to break someone wasn't through their own pain. It was through their children. He approached Master Thornton with a proposal. "Sir, I've been thinking about that Aggy woman's girl. The little one, Lily. She's prime age for training as a house servant. Start them young, you know. Teach them proper manners, proper submission. And I know a family in Richmond looking for a child to train up. Good Christian folks. They'd pay well." Thornton considered. The girl was young, but not too young to sell. And it would solve two problems: make some money and break Aggy's spirit completely. "How much they offering?" Hayes named a figure that made Thornton's eyes light up. "Done. Arrange it." They took Lily on a Tuesday morning in April. Aggy was at the big house scrubbing floors with her poor twisted hands when she heard the commotion outside. Screaming, children crying. Mama Ruth's voice raised in protest. She dropped her brush and ran, her heart knowing before her mind did. In the yard, Hayes held Lily under one arm like she was a sack of grain. The child was screaming, fighting, reaching back toward the quarters where Jonah and little Sam stood crying. Mama Ruth was trying to intervene, but two other men held her back. "No!" Aggy screamed, running toward them. "No, not my baby! Not Lily!" Hayes turned to face her, a satisfied smile on his cruel face. "Master's orders. Girl's been sold, leaving this morning. You can't. She's 4 years old. She's a baby. She's property, and property gets sold when the master says so." Aggy tried to grab Lily, but Hayes shoved her back hard. She fell, her useless hands unable to catch herself, hitting the ground hard. "Mama!" Lily shrieked, reaching for her. "Mama, don't let them take me! Mama!" Aggy scrambled up, threw herself at Hayes again. This time he backhanded her across the face, splitting her lip. She fell again, tasting blood. "Mama! Mama!" A wagon was already waiting. Hayes threw Lily into the back where a white couple sat. The buyers from Richmond come to collect their purchase. The woman tried to comfort the screaming child, but Lily fought like a wildcat, scratching and biting. "She'll settle down once she's away from here," Hayes assured them. "Just needs to forget her old life. They always do, given time." Aggy was on her feet again, running toward the wagon even as it started moving. "Lily, baby, I love you. Remember who you are. Remember..." Hayes grabbed her, wrestled her to the ground, held her there while the wagon rolled away. Aggy fought him with everything she had. Her ruined hands, her teeth, her legs. Her whole body became a weapon of desperation. But she was weak from grief and he was strong from cruelty. "Lily! Lily!" Aggy's screams echoed across Bell Acre. From the wagon, growing more distant, came her daughter's cries. "Mama! I want my mama!" Then the wagon disappeared down the road and Lily was gone. Hayes released Aggy. She collapsed in the dirt, sobbing so hard her whole body convulsed. Mama Ruth hobbled over, sat beside her, pulled her into a rocking embrace. "My baby!" Aggy wailed. "They took my baby. She's 4 years old. She needs me. She needs..." "I know, child, I know. Lord have mercy, I know." Jonah and little Sam ran to their mother, threw themselves on her, all three of them crying together in the dirt while the white folks watched from the big house porch like it was entertainment. Master Thornton sipped his morning coffee. "That'll teach her," he said to Hayes. "Hit them where it hurts most. The children. She'll think twice before stirring up trouble again." But he was wrong. That night in the quarters, Aggy sat on the floor of her cabin, her remaining children pressed against her sides, her body rocking back and forth like she was praying or grieving or both. "I failed her," she whispered. "I failed to protect her. What kind of mother?" "Stop." Mama Ruth's voice was sharp. "This ain't your failure. This is their evil, you hear me? Their evil, not yours. You did everything a mother could do. You loved her. You taught her strength. You gave her what she needed to survive what's coming." "She's 4 years old, Mama Ruth. How does a 4-year-old survive being ripped from her family?" "The same way we all survive. The same way I survived the Middle Passage. The same way you survived the Post. We endure. We remember who we are. We hold on to something they can't touch, even when they take everything else." Aggy looked at her 2 remaining children. Jonah, trying so hard to be brave, his little face set and serious. Little Sam, still crying softly. Both of them looking at her like she had answers, like she could make this better. "I can't lose you too," she told them fiercely. "I can't. We gotta be more careful, gotta stay together. Whatever it takes." But even as she said it, she knew it was a lie. There was no safety in bondage, no way to protect your children when they wasn't legally yours. No guarantee of anything except more suffering. That night, Aggy made a decision. She couldn't fight them openly. She'd tried that and lost her hands, lost her husband, lost her daughter. But she could fight them in ways they'd never see coming. Could teach her remaining children to do the same. Could build something that would outlast all the cruelty and separation and pain. She could survive. And in surviving, she could resist. Every single day, in every small way. Because that's what Isaiah would want. What Lily would need to know when she was old enough to understand. What Jonah and Sam needed to see. That their mama didn't break. Not at the Post. Not when they took her husband. Not even when they stole her baby girl. Some souls can't be bought or sold or beaten into submission. Some souls stand, always. The moon was dark the night they ran. It was October 1839, 18 months after Lily's theft, and Aggy had spent every day of those months planning. Not alone, never alone. With Thomas and Dinah and Martha and 6 others who'd grown tired of praying for deliverance that never came. 10 souls ready to risk everything for a chance at freedom. They'd been careful. So careful. Gathering supplies over months, bits of food, a knife stolen from the big house kitchen, a compass one of the field hands had found years ago and kept hidden. They'd memorized the paths through the woods, studied which dogs slept heavy, which paddy rollers rode which roads at what times, and they'd waited for the perfect night. New moon, Master Thornton away in Richmond on business, Hayes drunk and sleeping heavy, which he did most Saturday nights. "You sure about this?" Mama Ruth asked Aggy as they prepared in the dark cabin. The old woman was too frail to run, too sick to make the journey. She'd stay behind, watch Jonah and little Sam, face whatever punishment came for harboring runaways. "I ain't sure about nothing," Aggy whispered back, her twisted hand struggling to tie a bundle of cornbread and dried meat. "But I gotta try, Mama Ruth. Gotta try to get to freedom, then come back for my boys somehow. Send word to Isaiah. Find Lily. I can't just stay here waiting to lose everything else." "Your hands, child. How you gonna make it with hands that don't work proper?" "I'll make it work, I always do." Mama Ruth pulled her close, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Your mama from across the water would be proud of you. You got warrior blood, always said so. You go now, follow the North Star. Wade in the water like the song says. And when you free, if you get free, you remember us. You tell the world what happened here." They kissed goodbye like it might be the last time, because it might be. Aggy kissed her sleeping boys, memorizing their faces. "Mama's gonna come back for you," she whispered. "I promise. Just gotta get free first, then I'll come back." At midnight, the group gathered at the edge of the woods. 10 souls, terrified and determined in equal measure. Thomas carried a sack of supplies. Dinah had her 2-year-old strapped to her back. Martha brought nothing but faith, and Aggy brought her ruined hands and her unbreakable will. "We follow the drinking gourd," Thomas whispered, pointing at the North Star barely visible through the trees. "Stay in the water when we can, hide our scent. Move at night, hide during day. We got safe houses marked on Abraham's map, stations on the Underground Railroad. We just gotta make it to the first one 20 miles north. Then they'll help us the rest of the way. 20 miles, someone muttered. Might as well be 20,000. Then we better start walking, Aggy said. They moved into the forest, leaving behind everything they'd ever known. The fear was suffering terrible. Every snapping twig could be a paddy roller. Every dog bark could mean they'd been discovered. But underneath the fear was something else, something that felt almost like hope. They made good time at first. 5 miles before dawn, following game trails and creek beds. They hid during the day in a thick stand of pines, taking turns sleeping while others kept watch. When night came again, they pushed forward. But on the second night, everything went wrong. The dogs found them. Maybe someone at Bell Acre had talked. Maybe Hayes wasn't as drunk as they thought. Maybe they just got unlucky. But suddenly, cutting through the darkness, came the sound that haunted every runaway's nightmares. Bloodhounds baying on the scent. "Run!" Thomas shouted. "Split up! Make them chase multiple trails!" The group scattered. Aggy ran with Martha and Dinah, crashing through underbrush, her twisted hands useless for pushing aside branches. Thorns tore her dress, scratched her face. Behind them, the dogs got closer. "The creek!" Aggy gasped. "Get to the creek! Water kills the scent!" They splashed into the cold stream, wading upstream, moving as fast as they could. Dinah's baby was crying now, the sound echoing through the forest like a beacon. "Hush him," Martha begged. "Please, Dinah, make him quiet." But the baby was terrified, inconsolable. And the dogs were getting closer. Then came voices, white voices, paddy rollers on horseback riding hard, lanterns swinging. "Over there! I heard something. Don't let them get away. Master Thornton paying bounty for each one caught alive." Aggy made a decision. "You two keep going," she told Martha and Dinah. "I'll lead them off. Give you time." "No!" Martha grabbed her arm. "We stay together. My hands too slow me down anyway. Can't climb, can't fight proper. But I can be a distraction. Now go!" Before they could argue, Aggy climbed out of the creek on the opposite bank and started crashing through the woods, making as much noise as possible. The dogs immediately changed direction, following the fresh, obvious trail. It worked. The paddy rollers followed the dogs, followed Aggy, while Martha and Dinah escaped into the darkness. But it also meant Aggy was alone, running with everything she had toward an ending she already knew. The dogs caught her within minutes. 3 massive bloodhounds, trained to track runaways, knocked her to the ground. She fought them with her twisted hands, kicked at them, screamed at them. One bit her arm, tearing flesh. Another had her leg in its jaws. Then the paddy rollers arrived. 5 white men on horses, rifles, and whips at the ready. Their leader, a man named Cobb who made his living catching runaways, grinned down at her. "Well, well, ain't you that woman from Bell Acre, the one with the ruined hands? You a long way from home, girl." Aggy spit blood at his feet. "I ain't your girl, and I ain't going back." He laughed. "You ain't got a choice." They tied her hands behind her back, her poor twisted hands that screamed with pain at being bound. They put a rope around her neck like she was an animal, and they dragged her behind their horses all the way back to Bell Acre, her body bumping over rocks and roots, her skin tearing, her bones bruising. By the time they arrived at dawn, she was barely conscious. Master Thornton was waiting in the yard, apoplectic with rage. "You cost me money and time and reputation," he roared. "I'm the laughingstock of the county, owner who can't even keep his slaves from running." "Should have killed me when you had the chance," Aggy whispered through split lips. Hayes stepped forward with his whip. "Let me finish what the post started. Let me break her permanent this time." "No." Thornton's voice was cold. "No whipping. That just makes her a martyr. I want her to live a long time thinking about what she cost herself tonight, thinking about what she'll never have." He turned to Hayes. "Sell the boys. Tomorrow. Both of them. Separate sales. Different states if possible. Let her live with that." Aggy's scream echoed across Bell Acre like the cry of a dying animal. But even screaming, even broken and bleeding in the dirt, she'd tried. She'd run. She'd chosen freedom, even knowing the price. and nothing could ever take that choice away. They took Jonah and little Sam on a gray morning when the fog hung low and heavy, like the grief in Aggy's chest. She begged. Lord have mercy, how she begged. Crawled on her knees to Master Thornton, her twisted hands clasped together like prayer, tears streaming down her face. Please don't take my boys, they all I got left, please, sir. I'll do anything. But her begging just made him smile, made him feel powerful again after the embarrassment of runaways escaping from his plantation. You should have thought about your boys before you ran, he said coldly. Actions have consequences, time you learned that proper. Jonah was 8 years old when they sold him to a cotton plantation in Mississippi. He didn't cry, didn't scream, just hugged his mama one last time with arms that trembled, whispered, "I love you," in her ear, and walked to the wagon with his back straight. His daddy's son, his mama's warrior. Little Sam was only 6. He cried the whole time, reaching back for Aggy, calling for her until his voice went hoarse. They sold him to a rice plantation in South Carolina, somewhere in the low country where the heat was killing and the mosquitoes carried fever. And just like that, Aggy's children was gone, all 3 of them, scattered across the South like seeds thrown to the wind. She wanted to die, wanted to walk into the river and let it take her, wanted to stop her heart from beating because what was the point of living in a world this cruel? But Mama Ruth wouldn't let her. "You still got purpose," the old woman said fiercely, holding Aggy while she sobbed. "You still got fight in you. You still got a story that needs telling. Don't you dare give up now. Don't you dare let them win like that." They already won, Mama Ruth. They took everything. They took your children's bodies, but they didn't take what you taught them, didn't take the strength you showed them, didn't take the memory of a mama who stood up, who fought back, who chose freedom even knowing the cost. That lives in them now, forever, and that's something worth holding on to. The years that followed was years of grief and endurance. Aggy worked the light duties she was capable of with her ruined hands, watched other people's children and tried not to see her own in every young face, mended clothes and told stories to the young ones about resistance and dignity and the price of standing tall. She became a legend in the quarters, the woman who'd survived the whipping post, who'd tried to run, who'd lost everything but never lost herself. Young folks would seek her out, ask her questions in hushed voices about freedom, about fighting back, about hope. "Miss Aggy," a girl of maybe 12 asked one evening, "you think we ever gonna be free?" Aggy looked at her with those lightning eyes that age hadn't dimmed. "Yes, child, I do. Maybe not in my lifetime, but yours? Maybe. There's whispers of war coming, whispers of the North rising up against slavery, whispers of change so big it'll shake the whole South like an earthquake. You hold on to your spirit till then. You survive. And when freedom comes, you be ready to seize it." The war the girl had mentioned did come, creeping closer year by year. By 1860, tensions was building between North and South. Talk of secession, talk of abolition, talk that made the masters nervous and the enslaved quietly hopeful. Mama Ruth died in 1859 at the age of 85. She passed peaceful in her sleep, wrapped in the same thin blanket she'd kept since arriving in Virginia 70 years prior. Aggy held her hand as she went, sang the old Igbo songs Mama Ruth had taught her, whispered promises that she'd keep the stories alive. "Tell them about the crossing," Mama Ruth breathed with her last words. "Tell them about surviving. Tell them we was human, always human, never forget that." "I won't forget, Mama Ruth, I swear it." The old woman smiled and closed her eyes for the last time. They buried her in the slave cemetery behind the quarters under an oak tree. No headstone. Enslaved folks didn't get markers. But Aggy knew the spot, would visit it and talk to her grandmother's spirit, seeking wisdom, seeking strength. The Civil War started in 1861. At first it seemed distant, something happening in far-off places. But gradually it came closer. Cannons could be heard in the distance. Union troops moving through Virginia. Confederate soldiers requisitioning supplies from Belle Acre. Master Thornton's sons went off to fight for the Confederacy. One died at Gettysburg. The other lost a leg at Chancellorsville. The old man aged overnight, his power crumbling along with his world. Aggy was 50 years old by then, her hair going gray, her body worn but unbroken. Her hands was still twisted, still painful, but she'd learned to live with them. Had learned to live with everything. And then, on a spring morning in 1865, it happened. A Union officer rode onto Bell Acre with a proclamation. Gathered all the enslaved people in the yard. There was maybe 40 left, the rest sold off or dead over the years. And read from an official-looking document. By order of President Lincoln and the passage of the 13th Amendment, slavery is hereby abolished in the United States of America. You are free. All of you. Legally, permanently free. The silence that followed was profound. Then someone started crying, then laughing, then singing. Within minutes, the whole yard erupted in joy and disbelief and overwhelming emotion. Aggy stood in the center of it, her twisted hands pressed to her chest, tears running down her weathered face. Free, after 53 years of bondage. After the whipping post and the lost children and the ruined hands and all the suffering. After everything. Free. Master Thornton watched from his porch, old and broken and defeated. His whole world was ending. The cornerstone of his wealth and power, the ability to own human beings, had been destroyed. Aggy looked at him one last time, and she smiled. Not a friendly smile. A smile that said, "I survived. I outlasted you. I won." Then she turned her back on him and walked toward a future she'd dreamed of for 53 years but never quite believed would come. She was free. And though her children was scattered, though Isaiah was lost somewhere in Virginia, though Mama Ruth was in the ground, the story wasn't over. The story was just beginning. Aggy lived 20 more years after freedom came, and in those years she did something the masters never expected. She became a witness. She couldn't read or write proper. Bondage had denied her that. But she could speak. And Lord have mercy, did she speak. To anyone who would listen, she told her story. Told about the whipping post. Told about the nails through her hands. Told about her children scattered like ashes across the South. She traveled with her twisted hands held high. Visible proof of what slavery had done. Ministers invited her to speak in churches. Abolitionists brought her to meetings. Former slaves gathered to hear her testimony, recognizing their own suffering in her words. "Don't let them tell you it wasn't that bad," she'd say, her voice still strong even in old age. "Don't let them rewrite history and make it seem like we was happy, like we was cared for. Look at these hands. Look at what they did when I dared to say I was human. Remember that, pass it down, never let them forget." She searched for her children. Spent years trying to trace Jonah, Sam, Lily. Found records of Jonah. He'd survived the war, was living in Memphis, working as a carpenter. They reunited when she was 70, both of them crying like babies, holding each other with arms that remembered. Sam she never found. He died in the rice fields of South Carolina during the war, fever taking him at age 12. The news broke her heart all over again. And Lily? Lily was lost to time. No records, no trail, nothing. Aggy died not knowing what became of her fierce little girl. Isaiah she did find in 1868. He was working a forge in Nottoway County. An old man now, his hair white, his hands still strong. When they saw each other after 30 years, time collapsed. They was young again, in love again, together again. They married proper this time, in a church with a real preacher and legal documents. Spent their final years side by side, healing what could be healed, carrying what couldn't. Aggy died in 1885 at age 73, in a bed she owned in a house she owned on land she owned. Free, legally, completely free. Her last words whispered to Jonah, who held her twisted hands gentle. "Tell them I stood. Tell them I never broke. Tell them the story." And Jonah did. Passed it to his children, who passed it to theirs, who passed it to theirs. The story of Aggy who survived the whipping post, who chose freedom knowing the cost, who lost everything but her soul. The story traveled through generations like a spiritual, like a work song, like a prayer. Changed sometimes in the telling, but the core truth remained. Some spirits cannot be broken. Some souls stand when they should fall. Some women look evil in the eye and say no. Now you've heard it too. Sitting here by this fire that still burns with old remembrance, carry it forward. Tell it to your children. Keep the memory alive. Because see, the masters thought they could erase us. Thought they could break our bodies and our wills and make us forget we was ever human. But they was wrong. We remembered. We survived. We resisted. And Aggy, sweet Lord Aggy, she showed us how. With hands that wouldn't work but a spirit that wouldn't quit. With love that endured across decades and distance. With dignity that no amount of cruelty could strip away. Her hands was twisted, yes. Her body was scarred. Her children was stolen. But her soul stayed whole. And that's the victory, children, that's the triumph. Not that she escaped every punishment, not that she got her happy ending all tied up neat, but that she remained herself, remained human, remained free inside, even when chains tried to claim her. So when the weight of this world gets too heavy, when injustice presses down and you wonder if standing up is worth the price, remember Aggy. Remember her hands nailed to that post. Remember her legs that wouldn't buckle. Remember her eyes that held lightning, and know this, resistance lives. The stories live. The spirit of those who came before lives in you right now, burning bright. Who suffered, suffered. Who resisted, left memory, and memory, children, memory is what we guard here. In the echoes from the quarters. We don't forget, we never forget. Amen. And Axe.